Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Craig.
We can show you the world as long as it's very specific.
Okay, this one I know. Go.
Cougs and hey, come on, man! You ruined my flow.
Sorry, keep going.
So, the Cougs and political shit and our kids and stuff. We can do all of that as if that's what you decide. Then subscribe and do all the other stuff if that's what you decide.
I'm sorry. I was so excited. I was like, I know that one.
Yeah. And I was really excited. You know, we're taking the bee to Disney World this week. So I was excited to do a Disney song, and it's probably the one I know the best. I think I was like 8 when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably one of the better ones, honestly.
Yeah.
But
as someone who took a child to a Disney theme park right around 1 year old, I hope she likes the stroller.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Obviously, we wouldn't do that normally. Well, one, we don't have to pay for her to get in, which is nice. She does like large animal type creatures and princesses and stuff. I think she'll get quite excited by that. She's fairly social.
Yes, she is.
But I'm already going down there for work, and Amanda hitched a ride on that companion fare. Bee's still free, and so we're like, hell, she won't remember what we will.
Ride that shit for as long as you can.
Exactly. Oh, we are. So we'll remember.
It starts getting expensive real fast, man.
Oh, we already know she's going to hate us when she's older, because we're going to have all these pictures of her going to Australia and Disney World and all these other places. We're planning a trip to Europe later this fall, and all these before we had to pay for her ticket. And then she's going to be like 10 years old and be like, why haven't we never went back to these places? Because we'd have to pay for you now, and that's do that.
It's like my kids now are like, why don't we eat out as much as we used to? And I'm like, because the 12-year-old has to eat off the adult menu. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, the kids menu is great. It's just
when each of your meals cost $5, it wasn't a big deal. Now that like his meal costs like 13 like mine, and then he's still, wanting to eat off of my plate and my wife's plate, and yeah, it's
well
don't
anyway,
have boys and don't let them grow up.
We're doing the kids up front apparently today, but welcome.
That's okay. We'll hold some back.
Welcome to Podcast versus Everyone. I'm Craig Powers. I don't think I've done our name intros in at least 3 weeks. With me is Jeff Newser. Jeff, how we do? I know you. Actually, let's start this right at the top, right even before the beer. I know you had a really exciting day today, and tell me why you're feeling good.
Yeah, I had a kick-ass day. So, my experience as a high school teacher is that people who are not high school teachers often think that high school teaching is a really like awful job. Like it's like I get these like when people are, I meet new people. What do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a high school teacher. I teach high school English, and they give me this look like it's either like, oh dear God, I could never do that, or pity, like, oh, God bless you for taking on that burden.
It's the same look if you're like, yeah, I've got 6 months to live.
Yeah,
so you get the same exact look. Oh, you're a high school teacher. Very sorry. I'm very sorry to hear that.
I try to tell them, like, and not very many people believe me, but I really do try to tell them. I'm like, high school teaching is great, like 98% of the time. Like, just like, there are a lot of jobs that I don't think there's any job that's good 100% of the time. Like, I really don't think that exists. And I think anybody who says it does is sort of just like maybe that says more about relentless optimism than it does about the actual job.
Well, yeah. You know that I have had my last couple of gigs been pretty sweet.
Yep.
And with some pretty ideal situations, and I still get frustrated and annoyed quite often.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
exactly.
So there are parts of teaching that suck. Like, grading is very difficult for me. Like,
I know. I remember many
oh,
years ago you were about ready to give up teaching because of the grading.
I was
Like
actually.
100% because of the grading.
Yeah, I had to make some peace with that and had to let go of some things and then it also helped that so at my school, just a quick side note, at my school the junior English class does a big research paper, and those things take like 15 to 30 minutes a piece to grade depending on how bad or good they are.
For
Bad
120
takes
kids.
longer, right? Yeah, and so like if I've got 3 junior Englishes, then I've got like 90 of those papers, and it really does take like 2 months to grade them all, and it's super terrible. So anyway, so now it really helps. I've only got 2 junior English classes, and so yeah, not so bad. But anyway, yeah.
But
So
this is
that
related to the Cougs, we promise.
yes, yeah. I promise I'll bring it back around. So anyway, so like 98% of the time it's awesome. Well, today was one of the like super awesome days at our school, and they do this at a lot of schools too. They have what's called Decision Day, which is where the seniors get to sort of publicly align themselves with their post high school plan. Most of those kids, it's college, but also they honor kids who are going to technical schools, kids who are doing apprenticeships, kids who have or are gonna enlist in the military. So they honor kind of all of that at the same time. And so if I want to say this, at our school we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now. I think 4. I think it's year 4. So anyway, first year they did it, I'm like, hey, I want to, and they split them up by school, right? So they group them by school. And the very first year I said, hey, I want to lead the Cougs. And so every year I've been the guy who gets to lead the kids from Rogers High School in Puyallup who have decided they want to go to Washington State University. And today we had 21 kids, 21 dang kids that are going to Washington State University. And it's just so fun to like talk to them, ask them, hey, where are you going to live? And of course they tell you, and not much has changed on that front. Right. There's
Right.
like a couple new dorms, but for the most part, it's the same. And, one poor kid who I love, I had him last year in junior English, and he's like, yeah, I put down my top 3 choices: Stevenson West, Stevenson East, and Stevenson North, or whatever they are. And I'm like, oh dear God. Like, I'm just like, I hated living in Stevenson so much, but I'm like, you go, buddy. I'm glad you're excited to live out there in the corner of a 1960s high rise, project style high rise. But no, it's just so fun to talk to them. And like, they're just so excited. And, I get to tell them like, it was, some of the best years of my life. I get to share with them kind of some of my favorite things, and then just like I said, to feel their excitement for it. And there are some things about being a teacher that are just really cool, and seeing kids through to the next phase of their life is one of the coolest. And one of the things I also do every year, I make sure to do every year, is I go to graduation and I get to sit down with the seniors as a row captain with them. And it's not like it's anything all that special. It's mostly just making sure they're not doing anything stupid and that they stand and walk through the line when they're supposed to. But it's like, as a teacher, I get to sit down there with them kind of as this last act before they move on. And their parents don't get to do that. Their parents have to sit up in the stands. And so I don't know, just like that kind of stuff with the kids. I mean, they make you pull your hair out. They drive you nuts. But getting to see them through that next phase is really one of the coolest parts of teaching. And so today was one of those things. And one of the 21 kids that's going to Wazoo is Maddie Egan, who is signed to be a tennis player for our NCAA tournament bound tennis program. And so that was pretty cool to get to talk to her. And so just an all around awesome day. And then to top it off, at the end of the assembly, they played Back Home, which I am 100% positive was completely directed at us and not just a general thing for all the Rogers grads who are going to, fan out all over the country and, go where they go. So anyway.
Yeah, that's very cool. Da 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 da.
It was.
Da,
I was
da,
like, they
da,
put it
da,
on.
da,
And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like talking to them. I'm like, I hope you like this song, guys, because you're gonna hear it about 10,000 times in the next 4 years. And they're like about 5 of them are like, oh no, we know, we're so excited. I'm like, yeah, you already got it. We're good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. I love it. Love teaching
Excellent.
almost
Good
all
way
the
to-
time.
Good way to start the podcast. Positivity, happiness, and then we'll get into the shit later.
Yeah.
But there's some fun shit to get into. But all right, let's get into some beer. Jeff, I saw the name of your beer,
Yeah.
and it immediately, when you were talking about all the grading that you had to do, I was like, that seems like it's,
Yeah.
it may be minimizing. But anyways, go ahead
Yeah.
and talk about it, and I'll talk about the brewery a little bit too, if you I don't know how much you know about them, but
I don't know much about
yeah,
it at all,
go
actually. So
go
that would be awesome.
go ahead, tell us about your beer, what it
Yeah,
is.
so this is
Have
a
it.
pint I picked up at Rainier Growlers called Some Paper by Mirage Beer out of Seattle. I do know that. This is a New England, as it says on the can, a New England style IPA, dry hopped with Chinook and El Dorado hops. Yeah, it's excellent. And regular listeners know that I love my New England style IPAs. This one is kind of fun. Like it's kind of a tropical fruit forward right at first, and then you get some bitterness on the back end, which honestly is to me it's kind of that controlled bitterness on the back end that really makes the good New England style IPAs, because some of them just taste citrusy and fruity, and then that's kind of where it ends. And so yeah, this is an excellent beverage. So tell me about Mirage, because I'd never heard of them before I saw this.
So Mirage is a super small brewery. They call themselves a nano brewery, which would mean they produce a very small amount of barrels, and they probably just have a pretty small system. And given the variety of beers that they produce, I'm guessing they do have a pretty small system, and they just kind of crank out every day. They're brewing a different beer every day, essentially. Um, so Mirage is definitely like, so I think they're a little over a year old. I remember their cans, they do some pretty fun looking cans. So basically what you see from them is they build themselves as a one-man farmhouse focused brewery. But what you'll see from them is honestly a lot of the nouveau styles, if you will. So yeah, they make the hazies. Some Paper is one of them. They crank out a lot of different hazies, or he does. Cranks out a lot of different hazies. I've had a lot of great ones. If I see a new can from them, I'll typically pick it up to try it, because I don't chase the hazy IPAs too much, but like if there's a good local, if a brewery that's good and local and does them well, I'll definitely try them out, and I've had a lot of good ones from Mirage. They also do pilsners really well. So they hit a few different categories, and then they have some definitely farmhouse focused beers. Obviously, they release very rarely, but because they're small and it requires a lot of barrel aging, so they've released a few farmhouse, saisons, kind of sour type beers, fruited sour type beers. So they're very focused on maybe like three different style groups in hazy IPAs or New England style IPAs, and then pilsners, lagers, like the lighter stuff, and then the farmhouse ales as well. So they're pretty interesting, and they've actually made quite a mark, given the small amount of brewery or small amount of beer they make. They just make high quality stuff, and they also make some pretty cool packaging as well. But it also looks like something that was probably fairly inexpensive to make as well. Although they have some labels that are super glittery and super like funny. I had one beer called Limo Tears from them, which was another hazy, and it was just a really glittery can. So they're really interesting. I've definitely been keeping my eye on them. I've had a lot of good beers from them. Hopefully they'll be able to grow a little bit and be able to expand their distribution. But for now, they're doing really well with what they have. So good on a good one to have in Seattle for sure.
Good. I'll definitely pick up some more when I see it then. This is a good beer.
Yeah.
What you
Definitely.
got?
So I got another Puget Sound newbie as well. I'm drinking a beer from a brewery. It's actually a brewery, winery, cidery, meadery But I think beer is what they've been making first and most often so far. The guys come from more of a beer background. Well, some of the main guys come from more of a beer background, but it's called the Garden Path Fermentation. They are located in Burlington, Washington. So up there, Skagit Valley area. They really focus on long fermentation products, so saisons, sours, things like that, oak fermented things, and then obviously the winery, cidery, and meadery stuff as well. I haven't had any of their non-beer stuff yet because I just don't really go for that much often, but it's a pretty cool concept that they're doing. They have a cool tasting room that I would love to. I haven't been able to visit, but I have a lot of friends that have been there. They keep a lot of other. It's a bottle shop too, so they keep a lot of really good beers from other breweries there that you can have on premise or take away. And then they also have their own beer there, which they've been producing more and more of. Um, if you live in Washington or one of the other states, I've alluded to to this uh, this app before, and I'll give them a shout out. So there's an app called Tavoir, Tavour, and
Yeah.
Garden Path is actually on that. So if you can't drive up to Burlington like me, either you have your friend Brian Logan, who was on the podcast, our our crazy tailgate podcast. Actually, I gave him a lot of shit on that.
If the listeners made it that far.
If you made it that far, but he was on that podcast. He's a big beer nerd as well, and he's picked me up some beers from Garden Path before. But I haven't driven up there personally myself. But they do sell some of their beer in some bottle shops around the Sound. Usually there's some in Seattle. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any available down here in Tacoma yet. But Tavar does occasionally, very rarely, because they're not a very big brewery, offer up some of their beer on their app. So basically, it's like a beer club, but you don't have to. You just get what you buy. So it's basically like a beer shop online. And just the beers are available for, maybe a week, and sometimes they run out or whatever. But I use Tavar. If you want to use Tavar, I'm just gonna straight up get my reference code and give it to you.
Yeah, do it, man. Heck yeah.
No, I have to actually send them an email. So whatever. If you want to get $10 off your first order, just
send an email. We have an email address.
Send us an email at podcastversuseveryone@gmail.com, and you'll get $10 off, and I'll get $10 off, and it'll be great. But whatever. So that was the only way I'm gonna call them. I was like, I feel weird shilling for them, but I do buy from them quite a bit. They have a lot of cool stuff from all around the country. If you want to try a lot of different beers, their quality of beer. I've been following them for about 4 years, and their quality of beer has taken a huge uptick in the last year and a half or so. So I actually, to the point where I would recommend checking them out. But anyway, so Garden Path. Yeah, they're a very interesting place. What I am drinking from them is called the Easygoing Drink, a Skagitonian Grisette. Jeff, do you know what a grisette is?
I have no idea.
So a grisette.
But I'll bet you're going to tell me. I'm going to learn something tonight.
So a grisette is, how it's now been, it's a style that lived in Belgium and then kind of almost died out, like a lot of styles, and then was resurrected in the U.S. Like a lot of things have happened. Like the Goza style was a German style that essentially died and then was resurrected in the U.S. because apparently we just have nothing to do with our lives but drink weird ass beer styles.
That beer style is weird ass. Like,
yeah, it is.
It tastes like a sweaty sock. But anyway, whatever.
But anyways, a grisette does not taste like a sweaty sock. So a grisette is essentially I think the easiest way to explain it is it's a wheat-focused saison style beer that's typically lighter than your average saison. So it's typically like 4 to maybe 6%. This one comes in at a whopping 4.4%.
Ooh,
So
careful now.
these are
Easy.
obviously typically lighter beers, lighter on the tongue. So and they have a little bit of the wheat kind of. I don't know how to explain it. There's this kind of wheat presence on them. They have so typically American breweries will throw some Brettanomyces in there, some other bugs in there to kind of give them a little bit of tart. Like little hint, like this one's got just a hint of tartness, which is actually very pleasant. And otherwise, it's very crisp and clean drinking. I love the Grisette style. It's there. We've talked about Holy Mountain before. They make a Grisette beer, and that is my favorite beer from them. And all the beers I love from them is their 4% Grisette beer. And again, like this is why I wanted to highlight Garden Path because there's not a lot of breweries that do Grisettes, and some of them do them really poorly. I had a beer from I think I told you about it. I actually mentioned on an earlier podcast from True TRVE. It looks like TRVE Brewing, and they did a grisette, and it came in like 6.5%. It was like hazy and thick, and I was like, this is weird. But I like mine clean and crisp and a little tartness, and this hits on all those marks. It's very good. Yeah, I'm very impressed with it. I definitely so I have a little story about the grisette style. So. I one of my best friends. He basically we work in the same industry, so we became friends through both we liked beer and then we would always try to meet up at various events when we were going to the same events. And one time we were at an event in Pennsylvania at a suburb outside of Philadelphia, and we wanted to go into Philadelphia to go to some of the beer bars, and also I had a friend that was happened to be in town. And so we were catching a train, and but next to the train there was a really good beer bar, and we're like, okay, cool. So we'll go a little early before the train. So we get a couple beers at the bar, and then we're like, okay, let's go catch the train. And we get over to the train platform. We're like, we look and see how much time it is, and we're like, we should get a beer for the train. And so I'm like, well, that place offers growlers, so I run back to get a growler. And being the beer nerd I am, I didn't just get like, whatever beer, just throw it in a growler. I had to look at the list, get it from a brewery that I know I like, or from a beer that I haven't had before. I had to try something new. And so I end up with this Oxbow Brewing out of Maine. They're an excellent farmhouse style brewery. So a grisette. And so of all the beers to be drinking on a train headed to Philadelphia out of a growler, I got a grisette, and so I get back and my buddy's laughing. He's like, why the hell did you get a grisette? Like what the? And so it's like this was more of a straight clean grisette. It wasn't like a tart, like it was more of a classic saison type yeast in it. And we were just chugging that in between the ticket taker walking by out of grisette. I looked up my Untapped check-in for that beer, and it's like me with a paper bag, and you see the little growler popping over the top. So we chugged that, and so ever since then, me and my buddy Luke always call this beer a train beer. So if you want to refer to grisettes as train beers, feel free.
I can dig it.
That is what we call them. That's what everyone should call them. Grisettes are train beers. But yeah, and in a couple months, we'll be riding. My family and I will be riding on a train from Indianapolis to Chicago, and it'll be 6 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know if I'll be drinking a grisette, but if I have some on hand, I may try. But yeah, so I'm a big grisette fan. My buddy at first thought it was a joke because he's not a big grisette fan. But I'm like, no, I seriously like grisettes, and I drink the train beers as much as I possibly can. Yeah, so I'll give this one 4 SEPTA rides out of 5. That is seriously what the commuter train system is called in Philadelphia, the SEPTA. So I'll give it 4 SEPTA rides out of 5.
That's pretty funny, actually.
I didn't ask you how do you rate your beer?
Yeah, this
Out of,
is it's like a 4+, like a 4+ whatever. We're 4+ whatever we're rating. I don't know. What should I rate it?
I don't know. So it's called. So we were talking about how many future Cougs out of 5 is it?
Oh, well, if we're doing future Cougs out of 5 on decision day, we're doing 5 out of 5. Sorry.
All right. Well,
5 out of 5 future Cougs.
that's just
21 out
fine.
of 21. This gets a 21 on a scale of 21.
Very good. I mean that I don't mathematically that's the same, but also it sounds better.
It does. It sounds like more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's get into this. So,
Yeah.
I think we're going to focus on on multiple accounts, some Twitter drama here. We'll start with the WSU drama. We'll get into some UW drama as well.
Uh-huh.
But let's start with this. I'll just call it a bunch of bullshit. So we got. Okay, we'll talk about the draft first for a sec, but Andre Dillard getting drafted, fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I
Super
think
awesome.
he landed in a great spot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see him. He's going to be playing next year. I think it's very likely. What a story. 2-star, 240-pound left tackle becomes the 22nd pick in the draft. And he was traded up to specifically be grabbed. So
Yeah, that always feels good.
So he had 2 teams fighting over him specifically, but they thought he might go as high as 15. But you never know with these things.
Yeah. Well, and only one offensive tackle went ahead of him, and it was the guy from Alabama.
Yeah, which says a lot. Who undoubtedly was a 5-star recruit.
Right. Yeah. Right. For sure. And so it's yeah, it's super cool, man. Like I mean, just the idea that I mean, anytime we have a first round draft pick is like, pretty special and feels pretty good. I mean,
it was
we don't
crazy.
get them all that often.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was just looking up, Dayon.
Yeah.
And it's just he's coming in 6th year in the league.
Right.
Like, so that was the last time we had a first round draft pick, and before that it was Marcus Trufant. So
and before that it was Ryan Leaf.
Yeah.
So
and then before that was
before
another.
That was Drew Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe, right? And Jack Thompson.
Yeah.
And there's not much of a list before that. So
nope.
Yeah. So it's always something that's special, and especially he wore that crimson-ish suit.
Yeah.
And then you had
that suit was like hot fire, man. It was a great looking suit.
Coach Miller wearing his gray and suit with crimson tie.
Yep.
And just obviously he feels good about his time at WSU, and they had that great AP photo of him flashing the 3.
Yep.
Which was just very cool, and
yep.
It was a very I usually don't watch the first round of the draft because the Seahawks usually don't pick, and it
right.
takes the longest of all the draft rounds,
right?
And it just drags on. It takes 3+ hours to pick 32 guys. But man, that was fun. It was fun to watch, and just how the Philly fans are excited to have him, and he's excited to be there, and he's in a good organization. Not sometimes in the first round you can fall to just a trash organization, but
yep.
He's in a good spot. I think that the type of offenses they run will fit him very well. He'll be able to use his athleticism and use his pass blocking skill, and it'll be great. And then, of course, I was a little earlier than I thought, honestly, but to see Gardner get picked in the 6th round by Jacksonville. After at that point, I was kind of just hoping he gets snagged somewhere late in the 7th, but I was a bit surprised he got picked up. And honestly, Nick Foles is the starting quarterback, so it's not like Gardner's blocked forever there.
Yeah, I mean it's a great landing spot for him.
He's got a
I
great
mean,
chance to be the backup this year.
yeah.
Yeah.
So number one, when you're drafted that late, the biggest thing you want is a real shot to be the backup, right? Because you're not there. There's no expectation that you're going to start. There's really no expectation that really anything else. And so you just have to prove your worth as a backup. Well, when you go to a team where they don't really have one, they have a guy that they drafted last year. They got, another dude they picked up off the scrap heap. I mean, it's, it really is all there for him to take. And, you got to figure that, if they're going to keep, just one backup, he's got as good a shot as anyone. And then if he's the backup again, Nick Foles did sign whatever, like I think an $88 million contract, something like that.
But what is that in quarterback dollars?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like, does that? I mean, can you even sign a free agent quarterback for less than that?
I mean, $22 million is, I mean, that's on the low end for a free agent quarterback of any any value,
starting,
any quality, right?
Well, I mean, they technically gave Bortles $100+ million extension the year before, so it's like it doesn't really like these are like funny numbers at this point. It really
So there is a legit chance for him to go in there and win a backup job. And I got to imagine they're at least as likely to keep him as the guy they drafted last year, so there's that. And then, you spend a couple of years there, and if Foles isn't all he's cracked up to be, people, think, hey, we'll give the backup a chance. And, and who knows from there, right? I mean, that's kind of what, basically happened with his career here. It's like, who knows, give a kid a chance and see what he does. So I was, not that the Jags are some kind of great organization, because they're not, but which is sort of the downside of going there. They really haven't had a good quarterback since Mark Brunell. I'm trying to think really quick if they've had a decent quarterback since Mark Brunell, and
Byron Leftwich
not sure.
He had a decent year or two,
like an okay year. So yeah, it's been a while since they've had a real quarterback, and that's always a little bit of a warning flag. But I do know, like kind of what Minshew said, which is, just give him a chance. He's like, all I'm asking for is a chance. Well, I mean, chance, there's a pretty good chance that he gets a chance at some point in the next couple of years. So I was thrilled for him, and they really seem to be excited about him down in Jacksonville. So
he's got that personality,
and he's close to home, which is great for him. Like that's super cool that he's close to home. So
and he's already got, he's at least going to make a couple $1 million. So that's pretty good, considering he was going to be like probably a grad assistant this year. So if he would have went to Alabama, he probably would have just been a grad assistant again this year. So that's quite a great change of fate, and he earned it. He earned all of it. So
absolutely,
it's a great story, and just honestly one of obviously both of ours all-time favorite Cougs now, and so it's just fun to watch him it's fun to watch him get drafted and get to revel in that, and get to revel in the attention, and it was fun to watch the ESPN do the little package on him and everything, and I'm pretty impressed with how many packages on every single guy that they have. They were talking about after the as the coverage was winding down, how they essentially have enough packages for highlight packages for 300 guys.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Like just the prep that the people that you don't see do on those draft, and NFL Network the same way. Like that is crazy, because you're just like like the 158th pick is like, they have a highlight package for him, and they have stuff to say about him. It's like, what the hell? But obviously Gardner was probably one of their easiest ones to have that, since he was in the Heisman race for much of the year, and quarterbacking a top 10 team or whatever. But well, obviously we had We had some guys get signed. Logan Tago to the Seahawks. Sean Harper and Darian Moulton. I can't remember. I should just look up the teams, but
I think
Sean
Harper went to the Texans. Moulton
Yes.
went to the Titans, I think.
Browns. Who went to the Browns?
Browns for Pallure.
Pallure. Yes.
Yep.
And I feel like we're missing someone other than Booby. No, I think we got them all.
No, I think that's it.
Okay,
I
so
think that's it.
So those other four guys are pretty much rookie invites to camp. Booby is a little more. He's signed like a undrafted free agent contract with a little bit of guaranteed money and stuff.
So he gets a signing bonus.
So he gets a signing bonus, which, with FAM coming, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's not a little deal.
Probably gets around, I don't know, 50 grand or something.
I think it was reported. Where did I see? Maybe I'm just making this up, but I thought I saw somewhere that it was like 90,000.
Oh yeah,
or something like that. I mean, it was reasonably. Yeah, it was like a reasonable amount of money. And
obviously, if you're a fifth or sixth round draft pick, it's gonna be better. But
right.
But honestly, like he landed in that's a great offense for him to be in.
Yeah.
I mean but when you're thinking before the draft, like of the teams that would be up for him, I think you and I, like I mentioned to you, like everyone's gonna want to back like him in like 5 years because that's how the NFL goes. Yeah. But if you're thinking teams like the Patriots or the Chiefs, like those are teams like that,
or the Eagles.
The Eagles, another one obviously, like that. That or the Rams, or even though they have more of a feature back, but obviously we saw that they're willing to just throw anyone out there.
Yeah.
It's like teams that run the Saints, teams like that run the offenses where they throw the ball a lot. They use versatile running backs. They don't care too much about feature back or anything. I think that's why I think like Booby has a very good chance to make that team. I expect him to make that team.
Yeah, and in particular with just sort of their whole running back situation.
Yeah,
like it's not even just the style that they play; it's the, what they had happen last year with Kareem Hunt, and now they've got, they're not going to be with Tyreek Hill, so they're going to be looking for, and not that he plays the same position as Tyreek Hill or anything like that. But there's
playmakers.
Yeah, there are options for.
There's touches.
There are touches available for guys. So yeah, it's a really good spot. And, it's kind of like once you get down past, the sixth round is kind of, depends on where you land. The seventh round is definitely like, I don't know, man. I think you'd rather go to a place of your choosing, than to be chosen in the seventh round.
There's that, but I also do think there's that just having your name called on the draft is just a moment that you only have one chance to get.
That is true.
Yeah.
But I do know that, by the time you're getting to
but
that
in terms of NFL chances, yes.
And even on the television, I know maybe it's getting the phone call is super cool. Hey, we're drafting you, and coach calls you or whatever. I guess maybe that's great, but it's not like by the time you get to the seventh round on TV, they're just flashing the names at the bottom. I'm watching NFL Network and they're doing Stump the Truck, right? I don't know if you were watching NFL Network or ESPN, but they do Stump the Truck, which is like, hey, suggest a guy and see if we have video on him. And that's how they spend basically the entire seventh round. And so, anyway, it's just, I think, obviously there's a little more money probably being a seventh rounder. But yeah, you're probably better off picking a place that is suitable for you, that is going to play to your strengths, that maybe you have a pretty decent shot of making a roster, all of those things. And so I think for Booby, that's fine. And I know, and maybe this is maybe the next direction we want to go with this, but it's like, obviously a lot of our fans kind of, we're like, oh, he should have stayed in school, and look at this, he goes undrafted, and whatever, man, you go get it. I don't fault the guy at all.
Well, guess what? He's not getting a $90,000 signing bonus if he stays in school.
No.
And we have talked about this on Slack and whatever, but specific, like, even in running back specifically, and even Booby's a guy who's I don't think his skill set was going to benefit from it wasn't going to improve. I don't think his tape was going to be any better from another season. He's going to be running the same offense, probably splitting the carries the same way with Max. Probably maybe even Max would be getting even more as a sophomore. So he might be looking at, I'm not even going to get as many touches this next year as I got this year. Plus, he's got a kid on the way. Plus, so he's probably at, about as good as it's ever going to get. He's a kid who's already gone through a major injury, fear of losing a scholarship. I think he said that he thought for sure WSU was going to pull his scholarship when he, tore his ACL his senior year, and they didn't. So just from his perspective, coming out seemed like it was not like a no-brainer, but it didn't seem like staying for another year was gonna give him any better opportunity football wise. And he already did he did 3.5 years of school, and so he's essentially a senior by age. And running backs do have a very limited shelf life, more so than many other positions in the league. Pretty much 30 is like this brick wall for many of them, and especially a guy who kind of lives on the fast twitch muscles and stuff. But yeah, to me, it's just like even when he initially announced, I had no problems with it, and I was bummed obviously for the Cougs because he's a great player. But I saw where he was coming from, and but obviously Coach Leach believes that players should always get their degrees and stay long enough for that. And we saw that just having that belief kind of stirred some feathers this week.
Yeah, that was a little. I don't
Stirred
know.
some feathers. Is that a? I think I mixed some metaphors.
It is now.
There.
It is now.
Yeah. Ruffled some
feathers.
Ruffled the pot. It ruffled the pot a bit.
Yeah. Stirred the wings. I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, I do think that so obviously I think our listeners are probably familiar, but James Williams doesn't get drafted. Mike Leach tweets sort of what seems to be sort of a cryptic subtweet at Williams because he wasn't drafted. And then Eric Dickerson, who is kind of James Williams's agent, but anyway, it's kind of a weird relationship, but whatever. And so, he starts going off on Leach, saying Leach has been, bad mouthing Williams through the process. And anyway, so it becomes this big to do. And we didn't even write about it at Coug Center because I was just like, this is a stupid story. It's a nothing story. It's so dumb. Like it's not going to have an impact on anything. Like Mike Leach is certainly not the first coach to be like, hey, this kid should stay in school. And then say, I said this kid should stay in school. I mean, it's like, I think on Slack the other day, I think it was Brian Floyd, said, Pete Carroll sat up front after Mark Sanchez decided to turn pro and just went, I don't agree with it, and it's like Pete Carroll made a a living out of being a player's coach at USC and just basically being like, hey, we send kids to the pros. And so, definitely like I don't know, like there's a long history of coaches being a little bit, having a little disdain for certain guys who leave early. And I think with Leach, honestly, I think the biggest thing is that Williams doesn't have his degree yet. And I think, if after, and he's been on campus for, 3.5 years, plus, 3 summers, right? And so that should be enough time to earn your bachelor's degree. And the fact that he has an entire semester left, at least that's what was reported when he went pro. I think that's the part where you kind of go, maybe academics aren't, the most important thing to him. And not to project too much because, nobody really knows. But when you kind of read around it, you kind of go, okay, well, this isn't like come back and finish one class. This is, come back and take an entire semester, and so anyway, I just think that's kind of where Leach landed on that was, hey, you should stay and finish your degree and, just kind of see that one through. I really don't think it was all that much about, hey, we want this guy to stay, for sort of selfish reasons. So,
well, and I do think if Booby was going to improve his draft, like if there was a path to improving his draft stock in his final year of eligibility, it would have been if he had his degree already and he could have done a grad transfer to somewhere else where he's going to be able to be like a feature back.
Yeah, probably.
Like feature back, get more carries, not be splitting carries with Max and maybe being in more of a running offense and then I could see a possibility because I just don't think his tape was going to change this year and his stock may have even dipped, who knows, but maybe it could have grown, but I just don't see very many ways it could have. He has some pretty great tape already. I mean, and so we saw a lot of times throughout the draft process, which is obscenely long at this point. It used to be a month shorter, but
yeah,
it's so long. And you'd see just random, kind of draft evaluator guys like look at that play he made against Oregon, where he broke. Out of the broken gate or whatever that we call it. Why can't I remember?
Gulp.
The big gulp.
Big gulp.
The swinging gate. But the big gulp. He broke the 9 tackles or whatever, made an incredible run. And, that was just like, whoa, look at this guy has just ability and balance and acceleration and strength and we saw a lot of plays like, not at that level. That was probably one of his best plays at WSU, but we saw a lot of amazing plays and we saw that no first tackler could ever tackle him. Like it wasn't going to happen. But yeah, so yeah, I really think that, that really was his only path towards, maybe getting drafted or better was not playing at WSU because I think, I read in some of his interviews where some of the questions he got, with NFL scouts and at the combine, was if he could be a feature back, which seems like a weird question to ask someone who you think you're going to draft in like 6th round, but anyway, so they questioned that he could be a feature back considering he never was at WSU. He was always splitting touches with Jamal Murrow and Gerard Wicks, Max Borghi. So he never was the guy. The closest thing was last year when he only had to split carries with one guy. But although I think he took a lot of carries from Gerard Wicks the year before as well. But yeah, so it's just. But anyway, so obviously his agent, who is a famous former running back, Eric Dickerson, decided to tweet out. Some stuff in his defense, I guess, implicating Leach in essentially conspiring to prevent him from being drafted, which is I just pretty much rolled my eyes.
Yeah,
I
mean that doesn't make sense on about like 4 different levels.
Yeah, it especially a program at WSU where we don't have a lot of guys drafted. We like compared to our peers. We don't have a lot of guys in the NFL compared to our peers. We need we would love to be able to sell that you could be a running back at WSU.
Absolutely.
And get drafted. So I just honestly, as much as Leach believes that kids should stay and get their degree, I seriously doubt he would be out there telling people not to draft.
Right.
And as much as I do believe Leach is a somewhat petty person.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, but I really doubt that he would undermine his own program in such a way, by going to NFL teams and saying, don't draft this guy. Like,
Right.
I really seriously doubt that. That's
It
just
makes no sense at
that's
all.
just some agent bullshit that you roll your eyes at because maybe you were shitty at your job and your guy didn't
Right.
get drafted,
That's
and so you're
exactly
gonna
it.
point fingers and blame it on, and then tell your charge your client that it's not his fault, it's your coach's fault too, and getting him on board. So it's just, I seriously doubt Leach did any of that, and obviously Leach said as much to the point, like he's not telling people who to draft and whatever, and it's not just to be like such a homer with Leach, and because I generally am not, but like in this case, it was just I just like when I saw the tweet from Dickerson, I just rolled my eyes like, and then in an interview with Dickerson even more, I just rolled my eyes because I'm like, this is not true. You're implicating something that's completely ridiculous, and I just like it. I guess he gave us something to talk about on the podcast when we
I
thought
guess.
we wouldn't have anything to talk about, but. We had a
Yeah.
freaking basketball
Thanks,
recruit
Eric.
sign, or commit, but now we got
Yeah.
to push that back. But yeah, thanks Eric for the content. We'll probably get a few more clicks because of you. So
Yeah.
thanks, buddy.
I mean, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but so something I say a lot is that I'm a big believer in Occam's razor, and I'm a big believer in, the simplest explanation being the most likely one. And the simplest explanation here is that teams didn't think he was as good as other guys. Like that's like, I don't know
And it
how.
wasn't just teams; it was draft
Yeah.
evaluations. Like, yeah, I know you and I are both looking at, obviously as the draft is going on, we're looking at like who are the best available on various guys' draft boards,
Yeah.
who are the best available running backs, and running backs only get start like honestly in earnest only get started being drafted in like the fifth round,
Right.
sixth round usually.
Yep.
Like that's when you see him come off the board. Running back is a very devalued
Yep.
position at this point.
Yep.
And so running back not being drafted. I mean, we saw Philip Lindsay who crushed the Pac-12 and like for multiple
Well,
years.
let's just be honest. Philip Lindsay was a much better Pac-12 running back than
Absolutely.
James
And
Williams.
we like Philip Lindsay like tore up the Pac-12 and then he went undrafted. But
Right.
then of course he had a huge season last year for the Broncos.
Yeah.
But it's like it doesn't matter. Like you can be the best in your league. In a top level league, you can be one of the leading running backs in the entire country, like Philip Lindsay was, and he didn't get drafted. And Booby probably had a little bit more, a little bit better measurables, particularly size wise, than Lindsay, but not really speed wise. Like Lindsay, I think at his pro day ran like a 4.39 or something. And he doesn't get drafted.
Yep.
And so it's not that surprising that a running back coming out of an air raid system who didn't get like 300 carries, he got per year and whatever, he's catching the ball almost as much as he's running the ball. Like it's not that surprising that like 20, that's why we talked about like a handful of teams who we thought would be really a good fit. There's a lot of teams here where they probably aren't looking for that type of guy.
Yep.
So you're basically hoping for, a dozen teams that will pick you, and there maybe only a couple of those teams are even looking for a running back in the draft. So it's not like a lot of he got like a fifth round talent, like just on pure talent and pure and like measurables, got like fifth round grades for some guys, but that's not like a grade for a guy is one thing. The reality of the draft is a different thing. And the reality of the draft right now, outside of guys like Saquon Barkley and the fucking crazy Seahawks, that is
Yeah.
that running backs don't get drafted early in the draft, and if they do get drafted, it's very late. And that by that time, if you're like the 10th best running back on the list, then you better hope that they have a huge
Yeah.
run on running backs to get drafted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the Seahawks, their current starting running back is a seventh rounder. So, who, by the way, is a absolute physical monster, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you look at you guys like seriously, this guy, like Chris Carson, got the seventh round,
right.
and Chris Carson is Booby if Booby was bigger
like
and
3 inches taller and
and
30
somehow
pounds
the
heavier.
same athleticism.
Right.
Like if he was 3 inches taller, 30 pounds heavier, and the same exact athleticism,
Yeah.
that's Chris Carson.
Exactly. So yeah, so I mean, whatever, good for Booby. Good that he's got a deal to go prove himself. I don't think he should have stayed for another year. I don't think
either.
that.
Yep,
I don't
yep.
think that at all. I'm just like, like if he's ready to go get it. And it's you put another year of wear and tear, and there's no guarantee. I mean, people are like, oh, he went undrafted, so that means he should have come back. And I'm like, well, no, because that assumes that by coming back, his stock improves. I mean, there's
other
all
guys
sorts
you
of
can say that
ways.
for.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways his stock could go down.
Yep.
And so it's not like the floor, if he sticks around for another year, it's not like the floor is the undrafted deal he just signed.
Yeah.
Like that's not the floor. The floor is he explodes his knee and can't sign a deal with anybody, or whatever. It's
Especially when you're talking
the Travis
to a guy,
Long deal, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's so, it's the floor is like way below what he just did, so you go, okay, could he have improved his stock? Maybe. I'm not going to say that he couldn't have. I'm not going to tell people that, hey, if he comes back, he definitely is in the same position. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he puts on another 10 pounds and, becomes a little bit more of a bruiser and north-south guy and improves his stock. That's always a possibility. But there's also the possibility that, he rips up his knee and he's actually in a worse position. So, like the position he's in right now is not that bad of a position. It's not that, I don't know. Like people talk about like how somehow being undrafted is, some sort of like massive failure. And I'm like, no, I mean, he signed an undrafted free agent deal. It's not a tryout like Pelluer and Moulton and all these other guys are getting. He signed an undrafted free agent deal, which means he's going to be in their camp this fall. Like, it's not like he's having a tryout here next week. He's going to be in the Kansas City Chiefs camp this fall. He's going to get a month to show what he can do. He's going to get some preseason games. Like, this is a great shot. It's an absolutely great shot. So, good for him. And this is not a bad place to be. And, go get him. Go get him, kid.
Absolutely. And honestly, like Booby's a great story, and that kid has worked his ass off, and I fully believe we will see him catching balls and running balls like this fall and beyond the preseason and even in regular season. I think we'll get to root a position player on this year. So yeah, that's great. But yeah, it's, you can say, obviously it's like you said, but like, you could say maybe last year with Hercules, yeah, maybe he could have stayed another year because he plays a position where adding 20 pounds could make a big difference and in terms of, NFL eyes or whatever. But, and he obviously had the shittiest of circumstances happen, and we're hoping it gets better this year. But yeah, so go Booby, go Gardner, go Andre, go all the rest of those guys in rookie camps. Hopefully we get to see them in uniforms come August. That's always fun. But yeah, so enough about WSU. Let's laugh at UW a little bit, Jeff.
Yeah, so UW apparently has 2 quarterbacks transferring, which
like
top
former 100
like 4-star guys,
4-star guys, 2 futures of the program.
But what's hilarious is, so these are 2 guys who are ostensibly the 3rd and 4th string quarterbacks, and apparently UW Twitter is having a moment.
Well, we do know their names are not Jake.
That is true. One of them is.
Well, one of them is not. See, the one is Jake. I don't know what he's doing.
It's like he betrayed his destiny or something.
I want him to stay.
Kinda.
All UW quarterbacks should be Jake.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So you get 2 guys transferring. UW, not even just Twitter. I mean, you got one of the most prominent UW voices there is
Yeah,
and
Brock Heward.
Brock Heward.
Puyallup native Brock Heward.
Puyallup of the Puyallup Hewards.
That's right.
They're somewhat famous. I think the reason I knew how to say Puyallup when I was a kid is because of the Hewards and the fair, of course. But
yeah. So by the way, there's a bit of a, it's not really a debate, but there's definitely, if you ever listen to Brock Heward's show and he says it, you'll hear him. He pronounces it more like Puyallup, like Puyallup, kind of like that, instead of Puyallup, which is kind of how everyone else pronounces it. So apparently that's the way he pronounces is kind of an old way of pronouncing it that kind of old timey Puyallup people say. But
I think Brock Heward fashions himself an old guy at times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brock.
Yeah.
Pass on.
Quitters.
They're real quitters.
He's like, I understand it, but I don't like it.
Yeah. So Jeff, I know you on the podcast versus everyone. That's at pod versus everyone on Twitter. Some spicy takes directed at Brock about how he was never really in the same situation at all.
Yeah. Well,
so go through that for us.
Yeah, I mean, so there's like a couple things that are sort of hilarious about this. One is Brock, and then also the fans, and I do expect it from fans. Like I think you expect fans to be sort of idiots, and by the way, that's not just Husky fans. That's all fans. Like of course people are going to be, I mean, we just got done talking about how our fans reacted to James Williams not getting drafted, right? Like, I mean, this, fans are most interested in their team. So whatever benefits or doesn't benefit their team is what they're going to care about. And, so whatever, but I would I would hope that Brock, particularly as a quarterback himself, could be a little more reasoned about, and obviously Twitter's not maybe the best place for, well-reasoned, well thought out, statements and arguments or whatever. But,
so
just
don't
the fact
put them there.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the fact that he said, I understand, but I don't like it. It's like, well, what are these kids supposed to do? Like, just sit there and waste their eligibility waiting for somebody to get hurt? Like
just think about this next year. If whoever wins the starting job between Gunnar Cruz or Cameron Cooper, do you honestly think that the other one is going to stay?
Nor do I think they should.
Yeah, no. You have two four-star quarterbacks, 4-star recruits who could have went to other Power 5 schools.
Right.
And do you so if Cameron Cooper wins a job, is Gunnar going to stay and then just wait so he can his redshirt senior year play?
I mean, they came to UW to try their luck, and they believed that they could win it.
And then Jacob Eason transferred in.
Yeah, and then the situation changed, right? Jacob Eason transfers in, and it also appears that Peterson really likes, Hainer. And so now you've got these two guys who are apparently battling it out for the starting job in the fall. And then you've got these two other guys, who are about to be redshirt freshmen who they stick around for another year, then what, right? Like they've already used their red shirt. So, okay, great. So now let's say they stick around for another year. Well, then if they decide to transfer, now they've now lost, they will lose an entire year unless they go to a junior college, so they're looking at, 2 years tops wherever they end up, so yeah, I mean, now's the time for them to go. It makes sense. Like it's just kind of silly to me. And, Terry Holloman, also had a tweet about, I was a running back with, what do you say, Rashawn Sheehy and Napoleon Kaufman.
I don't know. How do you portray eye rolling on?
I mean,
on a podcast. We should start recording it video because my eyes I can see behind my head. My eyes so far back.
It's, I mean, number one, let's put it. Let's say this: if you can't recognize that quarterback is a little bit different than every other position, then you're an idiot. And so it's like, and if you're a football player who played at a Division I program and you can't recognize that quarterback is different, you're really an idiot. Like, it's just like use your brain for half a second. I'll bet Holloman was out there playing special teams and doing all kinds of stuff.
And still got some carries. Like,
Yeah.
if you're the third string quarterback,
You will never
you're
play.
never touching the ball in a
will
live
never
game.
play.
Ever.
You probably
unless you're the holder.
Maybe you're the holder.
Like,
That's about it.
If you're just so good at holding,
Yep.
like maybe you get to touch the ball in that. And I'm sure you're super satisfied with your life if that's all you do is hold the ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you're warming up, like you're warming up the backup quarterback if QB1 looks maybe injured. That's the highlight of
That's your job. Yep.
You're hoping like for WSU 2009 epic or was it 2008? I get whatever year.
Right.
Or
you got broken backs and broken necks.
Broken backs and necks everywhere. Like you're hoping for that epic of like a horrible thing. So yeah, but running back, like there's no even fucking a Wisconsin feature back doesn't get every single carry. Like it's like even a guy from the Big Ten, like where they love their 40 carry a game guys, like they don't, Saquon Barkley, guys like that, like they don't get there's still other running backs that come in and touch the ball. Like there's even a fullback that gets to touch the ball once in a while. Like Max Strong scored touchdowns in his career. Like it's like being any sort of running back is completely different.
Literally any other position other than maybe kicker or punter.
Yeah, but
like those are the only positions where it's only one person plays. Yeah, like every other position, you look at, example for WSU, Keith Harrington, right? He got, I don't know, 5 carries this year or whatever it was, but yet he was out there on just about every special teams unit. He played, even though maybe it wasn't what he would want or whatever. Same thing with Robert Lewis, right?
Shout out to both those guys.
Yeah.
Keith Harrington and Robert Lewis. Keith Harrington was a legitimate factor his redshirt freshman year.
Yeah.
And then Booby came and he just barely touched the ball after that. But the dude was more fired up to make a special teams play than anyone.
Yeah. So it's just different.
Robert Lewis is out there, came back for a 6th year.
Yeah.
And you got 1 touchdown in a blowout, and you never heard a word from him, but yeah, it's like, quarterback, it's just completely different, and it's just you can't blame these kids for wanting to have an opportunity to play. What are you supposed to do? It's this like double standard where you want the guys to be competitive, but you don't want them to if a coach decides a guy is above you, it's very hard to change his mind after that because that guy's getting the reps and you're not.
Yeah, and it's I think the other thing to point out, and you alluded to this earlier, college football quarterback recruiting has really changed in the last. I don't know how far back this goes, but it's at least like 4 or 5 years. The top programs, it used to be, they would recruit like one guy, and they would be basically designated the guy for whatever, 2, 3, 4 years. So you would sort of recruit, especially if you landed a really high level guy. You would recruit this high level dude, and then you would spend maybe 2 years not recruiting really anyone other than just basically like a guy fit to be a backup. And they'd be recruited with the idea that, hey, you're basically going to be the backup. And guys would be like, all right, I'm going to be the backup. That's cool. So you'd follow up a high 4-star kid like, say, Brock Heward with, a mid 3-star kid who, probably otherwise would not get an offer from Washington, but gets a chance to go to Washington. Right. And so that's what it used to be. Well, now, high level programs like Alabama, like Georgia, which is how Eason ends up at Washington, right? Like Washington, like USC, like it just doesn't matter. They are recruiting the best kid they can recruit every damn year. And they just go, you know what? We're just going to add a bunch to the pile, and, however it works out is how it works out. And what you're seeing is, okay, so when a Jake Fromm, wins a job at Georgia and Jacob Eason is a year ahead of him, and it's like, wait a second, like I'm never, ever, ever going to win this job back unless the guy gets hurt or unless he declares for the draft in 2 more years, right? Because he was a true freshman. Like you'd be stupid not to transfer. Like, why wouldn't you? That's just silly. So it's like, and then you see, Tate Martell and, all these guys, right? I mean, there's tons of guys who do this now. Like, I don't begrudge them at all. And so for Brock Heward to say, I understand it, but I don't like it. And I'm like, bro, like they didn't recruit anyone. So they recruited Damon Heward to be the starter for basically for 3 years, right? Recruited a couple of like nobodies to fill in between Damon Heward and Brock Heward. And then after Brock Heward, they didn't recruit anybody for 2 more years. They recruited Marcus Tuiasosopo 2 years after they signed Heward, which if I remember right, this is the thing, like it's tough to know because recruiting services were not as comprehensive, back then. But, if I remember right, I mean, Tuiasosopo wasn't even like he was not like a high 4-star kid, if I remember right. He was considered kind of a project. There were questions about his throwing ability, I think, if I remember right. So anyway, it's just I
think you're right.
But and there was a thought that, okay, Heward, probably a guy who, and again, this, is the thing, like he's probably a guy who, he redshirts and then starts for 3 years and then probably leaves after his junior year. And, that's probably the soonest we really have to worry about having another guy. Well, they don't do that anymore, So look, if you go and you try your luck and it doesn't work out, then I mean, by all means move. Like it's kind of silly. It's silly not to. Like I would think less of a guy if he didn't go. I'd be like, well, what is it that you want? So like when Terry Holloman says, well, I stuck it out, I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I'm glad you were happy with your mediocre career where you never played. I mean, like, are you supposed to get a certificate for that or a cookie?
Yeah, maybe you could have went to San Jose State.
Yeah, like
carried
maybe
the ball,
exactly.
Like,
maybe
run
you go
for 1,000 yards or something.
Yeah, go to San Jose State, San Diego State, go to whatever, Colorado State. I mean, I don't know. It's like maybe you go somewhere else and you carry the ball a bunch and then maybe you're a pro. I mean, who knows, right? But if you were okay not playing
maybe
for 4
you go
years,
to Alabama and be the 3rd string quarterback, or maybe you go to WSU and you're the starter.
And the irony of it all is that they're like killing these 2 guys for leaving when their maybe starter, their probably starter, is a guy who left the same kind of situation.
Yep.
So like, are you crucifying that kid, or is it just the guys who are leaving because you like your team and you're like, no, this is going to hurt my team, which I think it's probably that.
I think so.
Usually.
Well, speaking of transfers, let's just transition on out of this.
Yeah.
And on to our most favorite sport.
Yeah.
It's
been a while since we've devoted some real time to nerdball.
Yeah, and I think this is gonna be a long podcast. But yeah, so Kyle Smith, Mr. Nerdball, has his very first commitment, which at this point in the game seems like also like a signing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's signing period.
Yeah.
So
he hasn't been announced, so he hasn't signed yet. But
yeah, he hasn't. Yeah, obviously. But we'll believe all that have said it. Deion James, a 6'8",
maybe,
6'8",
maybe we'll talk about that.
Who knows?
Maybe
6'8"-ish, 250-pound-ish guy. Sorry, big burp there. Sorry, a big transfer from Colorado State via a few other places. Really only has about 2 years of Division I data for us to look at. Most recent being 2 years ago, because last year he actually redshirted redshirted, however you say that.
Yep.
Redshirted because he messed up his knee in August before the season started. So he hasn't played since 2017-2018 season. Deion James, and he essentially, Jeff, to me, I think when Smith is coming in, he's like, especially if it looks like Wade is going to leave, he needed another guy on the front line. Let me just I'll let you get into first impressions before I do, but yeah, obviously a small front court player. He played power forward and center at Colorado State, which he's very undersized for that.
Yeah.
But beyond that, go ahead. Give me your first impressions.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably miscast there. The reason I said about the 6'8" thing, so he was 6'8" when he was at North Carolina A&T. He was 6'8" when he was at Pima Community College in Arizona. He was 6'8" in his first year at Colorado State, and then last year he was 6'6". So
Ooh.
I don't know. Like, they did get a new coach last year, so I don't know if the new coach was like, you know what, we're committed to honesty and integrity around here, so we're actually going to list you at your real height.
Honestly, if you look at his statistical profile, 6'6" makes a hell of a lot more sense.
It does. You know, I don't know. I don't know if they want him to seem small. I have no idea.
Maybe they, but the Eustace and all the other previous coaches didn't want to anyone to notice that they were playing a 6'6" guy at center.
Yeah, or maybe I don't know, or maybe nobody actually,
or maybe
nobody measured him.
Maybe he shrunk.
Yeah, I mean, maybe nobody ever actually measured him, and then they measured him. We're like, well, shit, he's 6'6". Or maybe last year. And so maybe this is it. I mean, like I said, we're just sort of like throwing shit out here, but maybe last year they were gonna play him as more of a wing, and so they wanted him to be 6'6". I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. So anyway, it's tough to know exactly how tall he is. I do know that I can say like things that he does well. He has one skill that he does well, which is offensive rebounding. He's a pretty good offensive rebounder. All of his other skills, I would say, in his 1 year at Colorado State that he played, I would call below average, just in terms of what you would want from a guy his size. Not a prolific defensive rebounder, not a good shooter really. Shot a lot of 2-point jumpers, which is not a great deal. That's always something that, unless somebody's very good at it, will sort of drive down your efficiency. So not a very efficient offensive player. So my sense is probably a couple things. One is that one thing I did notice is his statistics suggest that he reasonably decent at handling the ball, reasonably decent at passing. So he kind of fits what Smith is looking for in terms of a guy who can do, different things and multiple things. So the interchangeable piece. And then, you don't really know what a guy does defensively just from looking at stats, without breaking down a bunch of film. And so I know that, Smith and his staff are breaking down film, and my guess would be, he's a defensive oriented guy. That he's a guy that they think they can get some excellent defensive minutes out of while also being serviceable offensively. He was an excellent scorer during his year in community college. That didn't translate to the Mountain West in his first year. Tough to know exactly why that is. One thing I noticed was that he was basically playing power forward, and then he was also the backup center. So his coach that year, Larry Eustace, was his last year at Colorado State. Kind of his second unit involved James as the center. And so they had a lineup that basically ran like, 6'2", 6'3", 6'3", 6'6", 6'8", or 6'6", or whatever he actually is. And so
hello, Ernie Kent. Is
yeah.
that you?
Yeah. And so, that'll, presuming he was, playing against some bigger defenders, That's definitely something that might lead to more 2-point jumpers. If you feel like you can't get to the rim against those taller guys. So I'm just kind of spitballing here, but kind of wondering why he had so many jumpers. That could be why. And also his 2-point percentage at the rim wasn't great either. And again, if he was, a lot of times being matched up against bigger guys, if it turns out he's actually 6'6", right, and not 6'8", and he's playing power forward, that would sort of explain a lot of kind of what looked like that sort of stuff. So maybe if he's, he was a pretty good scorer at community college, shot the 3-pointer competently at community college. Maybe if he's a 3 instead of a 4 for us, he could be useful and maybe be a little more efficient than what he was there. And I also know that Smith sort of runs an offensive system that's really a threes and layups kind of system. And so maybe if he can get away from those inefficient shots, he can, provide a little more value offensively.
Well, yeah. And I'm sure you're doing the same thing I'm doing. You're just because we now have a coach that at least, just seems like he knows what the fuck he's doing. You look at a guy that either he's looking at or a guy he's bringing in, and you just look for reasons why he might be bringing him in, and you talked about those points. So yeah, I saw some of the same things. Like, he definitely looks defensive oriented. He looks like he's probably athletic, given his block percentage is fairly high.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
And his steal percentages have been pretty decent, especially if he's playing power forward. His steal percentage is pretty good, and especially if he's actually 6'6", his block percentage is pretty good. Yeah, and honestly, like, so his shooting percentages are bad, but to be so 2-point jumper oriented and still shoot almost 49% from 2 is pretty good. Like, if you're looking at a guy who's taking a lot of mid-range jumpers, you would expect those to be more around 40%, 45% shots. So if he's not taking a lot of shots at the rim, and he's not shooting those very well, if he can shoot the mid-range, his free throws, even though he didn't get to the line that much because he shoots mostly mid-range jumpers, you're not getting to the line in that case. Decent free throw shooter. Obviously not his freshman year, he was not, but most freshmen improve. His year at Colorado State much better when he has more regular playing time. I could see him as a guy that shoots a hell of a lot more 3-pointers next year, especially in specific spots. Given this staff's analytical prowess, what it's going to be, I'm sure they're going to put guys in the positions where they shoot the best. So I could see him, obviously I have not seen any film on this guy. I'm looking at his Ken Pom statistical profile and his hoop math statistical profile, which breaks down the shots he takes. But I'm seeing a guy that I'm not trying to be, I think overall it's a meh.
You got to have guys to fill out the roster.
Yeah, I mean you do, and we weren't going to pull the best grad transfers.
No.
And this is I don't know if it is a grad transfer. He's playing next year. You got a guy that probably has some athleticism, probably has a decent shot that you can work with. And also he's not afraid to shoot. He had pretty good usage rates for it's not like a Jeff Pollard 10% shot percentage here.
Right.
Like it's a guy that will shoot the ball. Yeah. So it's a guy that probably if you're Smith and his staff, it's a guy you can have some skill sets that you can work with and maybe utilize and yeah, it's don't freak out over this. Like it's not amazing. Like but we weren't gonna get we need grad transfers next year.
Yep.
We needed grad transfers next year. We're losing a bunch of guys. If we're gonna improve next year, we need just some bodies, man.
Yep.
And
guys who have experience and know how to play, and they're gonna bring you something. Versus and look, we're gonna do this so much over the next year. comparing what Kyle Smith is doing to what Ernie Kent did. But, I mean, our fans probably remember that Ernie just seemed to be grabbing high school players off the street, and all of them transferred eventually, either within a year or 2 years, most of them after the first year when it was clear they could not play at this level, either couldn't get on the floor or got on the floor and just couldn't do anything. And so, I would rather this. And I think the best part is, I think there's two really good parts. One is that he brings you some experience. He knows how to play. He's physically mature. Like he's just kind of ready for that piece of it. And that's an important thing. And then the other thing is that, he's only taken up a scholarship for a year, and so
Right.
for you, this is really what you sort of call year zero, right? And kind of whatever you get on year zero, you're hoping to add guys who will make you a little bit better next year, right? And so, and again, like I said, with his offensive skills being kind of I tend to think he's probably a pretty decent defender, or they think they can make him into one. And so fine, get a guy in there who's going to eat up some minutes and, maybe be a decent defender and hold down a scholarship for a year while they go hit the recruiting trail and really then go and try and identify and sign some guys that are going to form the foundation of the program. I think that's, I think it's a good strategy, man. I don't think you want to fill, I don't think you want like 5 grad transfers, but 2 or maybe even 3, I don't think is a bad idea. Like, I think that's, I think Texas Tech showed, and I know that, you run the risk of, getting yourself into trouble if you point to, what maybe is an outlier and rely on that too much. But I mean, Texas Tech had 3 grad transfers in their starting lineup, so, you just go, okay. And, that's not, I think a little bit of the stigma has been removed there, that you're adding these guys for 1 year and all of this, maybe that's asking for a disaster. Well, I think that Calipari showed you can win a championship with a bunch of first year guys, and, Texas Tech came dang near close to showing you could win a championship with a bunch of 1 year guys, but on the other end. So, I'm not afraid of grad transfers, and if we got 3, that wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
Well, and like we've talked about before, you need some results at some point to be able to recruit in the future. Yep. And you can't spend all these scholarships as you can have available on freshmen, on the freshmen that are available and that he could pull and expect to have good results next year. Like you got to bring in some experienced bodies, some muscle and some guys that that know what they're doing. And so it's that you can plug and play right away. Otherwise you're just going to have a lost season, and that's going to serve you no purpose whatsoever.
Yep. And I can tell you,
yep.
they do not want that. They are not okay with next season being a lost season. They really, really, and that's something I'm going to write about. That's the last thing.
And I don't think Pat Chun is okay with that.
No, I don't think so either. So, I mean, even if he wasn't, I mean, Smith's got a 6-year contract. I mean, he could do it, how he wants to do it.
Right.
But they don't want to do that. They do not want to establish a culture of losing. They just don't. And they, I can tell you from the interview I did with him, one of the things we talked about just very briefly, because it was at the end, but, I mentioned Texas Tech. I'm like, is that something you guys look at? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Like we took the team and sat them down and we watched that game. And I said, that could be you. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but basically like that could be us. That is us. That's Texas Tech. That's a school that's really similar to us. Like, so anyway, they just, I think they also don't think you have to take a step back. I mean, I think they feel like that we can do this.
Well, dear God, I hope we can't take a step back.
Well, yeah, but I just mean like, basically treading water while you turn over the players.
Right.
That's just not.
And offering excuses, just
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
excuse
that's
after
just not
excuse.
something. That's not something they want to do. So yeah, they're out there grinding, and I think on the one hand, like I would love to hear more signings. I'm kind of getting a little
Yes.
antsy,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, it's also, I mean, I guess it should be comforting that they're not just grabbing whoever they can grab. So
Yeah, man. So what do you think? We talk about some kiddos, some pop culture, or do we let these people go on? Yeah.
I don't know. We can talk about one more thing. I mean, let's. I don't know. You want to talk about Avengers? I haven't seen it yet, but
Well, I've definitely seen it.
you went and saw it.
Yeah. Of course. My lovely
Don't
partner,
spoil it for me.
my lovely partner knows that I desperately needed to see that movie, and just she's cool. I go
She's
by my
extremely cool.
I go by myself to the movie, which is after the bee went to sleep. So 9 p.m. showing on Thursday, and for a 3 hour movie, which I didn't limited my water intake and didn't get a soda or anything at the movie theater just so I
Yeah.
could not miss any of it. And I recommend not missing any of that movie, but it's very they cram as much as they can into 3 hours. You're almost like you probably could have made 2.5 hour movies out of this if you wanted to. But yeah, so I went by myself, Jeff, which we had a little after podcast chat last week, and you pointed out that you like the Marvel movies, but Sarah doesn't. And then you made a comment where you can't go to them, but you can't go to the movie by yourself, and I of course don't agree with that. It's a dark room, and you don't, and the thing that everyone hates is talking.
Yeah, that
Uh,
is true. That is true.
so um, whatever. Like Amanda hasn't seen the movie, so obviously I can't talk about it with her. Honestly, she's not the person that I like talking about Marvel movies with anyway, because she hates almost every single one of them. So I'm just like, I don't want to talk about it with you anyway, So she's cool with me seeing it, and she knows I have other people to talk about it with. So although we talk about spoilers, so I can't really talk about it with you have to like check with someone. Have you seen it? Can we talk? Can we talk about it? No? It's like Game of Thrones, although Game of Thrones seems fairly spoiled this last episode if you're anywhere on the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you could possibly
I see
avoid
lots of
spoilers.
references that I don't understand. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I see.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gifs and stuff from like I feel like would just spoil. But anyways, but yeah. So Jeff, one thing you mentioned on your when we were talking, your youngest Atticus has never seen uh, uh, Infinity War, and obviously has never seen Endgame. But I know, like I saw him in a picture the other day rocking an Infinity War shirt, and you said he really likes Thanos.
He
And
does like
when I think this,
Thanos.
you need to have this kid watch those movies before he says this in
So
public.
okay, so hold on. So he did actually see Infinity War basically watched it over the weekend.
Okay,
So we
so
finally let
from
him
our
watch
last
Infinity.
conversation to
Yes.
now,
Yes.
and
So
does he
between
still love Thanos?
he see, here's the thing. Well, he's 7, right? Which is why he hadn't watched Infinity War yet.
Of course.
Because we were just like, oh man, like it's funny. Like some PG-13 movies are like fine. Like okay, so we went and saw Ant-Man and the Wasp over the summer when he was 6, and it was fine.
That's
Like that, like
very different from Infinity.
yeah, like they're like it's goofy, it's whatever. I mean, PG-13 is because there's like I think like one F-bomb in there, and I think that's it.
I mean, yeah,
Basically.
Infinity War you start out with some
Yeah.
some pretty
some
gruesome deaths, like
right
in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, and then it's like there are parts of the movie where I don't know, half of a town is getting slaughtered. Like it's just like, so there's we always just kind of went, man, it is so intense. Like it's so intense. Like I can't do this, as bad as he wants to see it. So we finally caved. And was like, okay, I guess, I don't know. Like parenting is full of these decisions where you're like, I don't know. So whatever. So anyway, so he did see it and came away from it. I think like, and this is, we had to have a little chat. So you're going to probably laugh at this. He kind of goes, well, I mean, Thanos basically wanted what was best. And I'm like, oh my God, we have to have
Dude,
right now.
Your kid is like a Redditor commenter right now.
I know. And I'm like, oh my God, we have to talk right now. I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like I'm thinking, okay, how do I communicate to my 7-year-old that this guy is a murderer terrorist guy? And I don't think I succeeded either. It's just, he's 7. His brain just doesn't quite sort of grasp the idea of, I think of evil, basically. The more I tried to kind of be like, no, he was a bad person. Like you don't murder people, even if it seems like it's for a good reason, and he just kind of wasn't getting it. Cause like I said, I think there was a little bit of a cognitive thing going on there. So
well, I know. So I'll tell you, Endgame is
worse,
more intense.
Yeah.
But by the end of Endgame, I mean the any part of Thanos that you could potentially argue is positive is probably undone by the end of Endgame. So
which does not surprise me.
So there's I think you saw, like, you could read plenty of message boards that, like, Thanos had a point, man.
Yeah,
Thanos had a point, but they do a pretty good job in Endgame of disproving his point and then also showing his true nature. So
well, and like, I think I was gonna say, I think the sort of the magic of Marvel and why I think Marvel has, I think there are a lot of reasons why Marvel has become sort of the preeminent, comic book franchise with movies, but I think honestly the biggest one is that their villains are sort of these, you can go, okay, they're bad people, but in the better
movies,
Yeah, with the better movies, you can do that with just about all of them, where it's like, okay, they're not these, sort of two-dimensional, just sort of evil caricatures.
They're the bad guy in the Ronan in the first. Well, he's also in Captain Marvel, but in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's just that one of those straight up just bad dudes who like is just out to murder everyone. But I think one thing I did love about Infinity War is that Thanos. He was the main character of that movie.
Yeah.
And it was his development was the most interesting thing about that movie. And so I if I'm thinking about a 7-year-old watching it, Thanos cries over losing someone. He
he actually mentioned that. He's like, yeah, he was really sad about Gamora, and I'm like, oh my God.
yeah. It's like, yeah, he was, but what did he also do?
Yeah. It's like,
so what did he while he was sad
well, and here's the other thing. So he was convinced also that by the end of the movie, he's like, well, they're not really dead. I know they're not really dead. And I'm like, okay, so like if you're a 7-year-old and or you're convinced, right, in your brain.
Well, I mean, he must have
actually kill him.
He's probably seen a trailer for Spider-Man: Far From Home,
right?
Which and spoiler alert, but come on, the movie's 3 years old, or I guess it's a year. I don't know. Like freaking watch Infinity War, it's on Netflix. But like Spider-Man dies in Infinity War, and even before Endgame has come out. There's a trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, which takes place after Endgame. So yes, you know that they're not really dead.
Right.
you know that. You know those are the stakes.
So I
They're
think
gonna bring
that
him
definitely
and
helped
plus,
him kind of
and,
make sense out of all of it.
yeah, but I think that there's going to be some parts in Endgame that maybe watch it first and then fast forward. But because there's some parts that I don't think an 8-year-old or 7-year-old should
Yeah, I'm not planning.
watch.
I'm not
Um,
planning on it.
but yeah, and I mean it's a 3-hour movie. I feel like someone could make like a 2-hour 8-year-old cut, like a cut. Like there's plenty in
That
there
would be
that
awesome,
that
actually.
like a 7 or 8-year-old could
Yeah.
watch. But
Yeah.
then there's like probably an hour of stuff where it's like, no, not so much. Also, I don't think it's a spoiler, but Captain America straight up cusses multiple times in that movie, but like PG-13 cusses. Like
But
obviously,
still,
but like one of
all
his big
American
things is that he
Captain
won't
America.
cuss, and then he straight up cusses. But anyways, Endgame
He's
is
had
awesome.
enough of this shit.
Endgame is awesome. I
Maybe
think
I'll try
like
to find some time to watch it this week. I don't know. I probably will have to go by myself if I go see
yeah,
it. So.
yeah. I think maybe when does I don't know. Maybe it'll still be uh in theaters when school gets out for you, and you can just
I'm
go.
sure that's a movie
There's like
that's going to have a
9:30
long run.
showings right now for it. I was hanging out with my one of my uncle Jim, who has been featured on Baxter's Beer of the Game earlier today, and he went to a 9:30 showing this morning or to watch it. So it's funny. That's how you make 1.2 billion dollars in a weekend. It's like there's all
People are
day long.
getting a coffee and going to the movie.
Which hey, like I don't know what time what time of day do you pee the less is like the best
Yeah.
time to go because it's not only a 3-hour movie. They do 20 plus minutes of previews before the 3-hour movie starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
So for me, it would be like, and this is probably way too much information, but if I started watching the movie at say 8:30, I'd probably be good. Cause that's like, after I get up and, take care of,
your morning
my
constitution.
morning movement. Right. And then, drink some coffee and, it's usually about 11:30 when I need to pee pretty bad, at school. So yeah. Yeah.
You just have
I
to
think it goes
manage your
well.
fluid intake. That's what it is.
Listen, as a teacher, I'm used to holding it,
Oh
so
yeah,
it's,
absolutely.
whatever. I'm okay. I would survive. I would be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do it. Hey, my pregnant sister went and saw it, and she is 6 months. Well,
God bless her.
she's about 12 weeks from due date, and she went and saw it and did
Bladders
not
just get
pee.
crushed.
Yeah, oh yeah, and she didn't go pee the whole movie. I'm so
Pretty good.
proud of her. We were like, she even like got because you can like book your tickets now in a lot of theaters, like the exact seat. So she got one like closest to the bathroom, ready to go at any moment to waddle on over. That's just for her waddle because that's what she's doing now. But yeah. So, anyways, yeah, yeah. Go watch Endgame, Jeff. It's great.
I will try to do that
It's an
between.
excellent 3 hours, man. Like
I'll try to do that between this week
there's
and next.
no time wasted, and that's like frustrating that there isn't actually.
Yeah.
I can't even think of a time. There's maybe like I can think maybe a 10-second window when you could go.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it hits right off the bat. But
Yeah.
anyway,
bet it
so
does.
yeah, that was our pop culture and kids segment.
Yeah.
Our opinion
But
one.
yeah, and by the way, speaking of things between last week and this, I've got a little present for you here. Hold on.
What? Hey, that's enough. We have to pay for that.
No, we're gonna have some commentary, which makes it fair use.
Ah, fair use, baby.
Yeah. To the Old Town Road.
Oh, we're doing the Billy Ray Cyrus version.
Yeah, this is. I wanted to go for the remix version.
Yeah, it's about he adds an extra verse at the end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's a
Jeff, how many times have you heard that since
I've
last
heard it since last week. I've heard it approximately 300 because they played it at every commercial break during the NFL draft.
See, and also what happens, it's like when you get a car and suddenly you notice that everyone on the road has that same car.
Yeah, that's
Once
exactly.
that you know this
Oh
song
my God,
exists.
so true.
Once you know the song exists, you hear it everywhere.
Yeah. I got to admit, by the way, it's a pretty good song.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed. I'm about 3 months late to this party, or 2 months late, whatever it is.
Hey, you're at the party now, and
I'm
it's
at the party
still
now.
going strong.
I'm ready to party. I'm the guy who shows up with a case of beer and is like, "Let's party," and everyone's already wasted.
Yeah, but everyone was like,
"That's okay. You brought a case of beer.
We were running out of booze, man.
Yeah,
Clutch,
you're good.
man.
Come on in.
Let's keep it going.
Let's party." No, it's great. Should we argue about whether it's a country song? Because apparently that's the thing to do.
Oh, no.
No, we shouldn't.
I think it is a music song. I don't know. Is it by Post Malone? No, I know it's not.
I mean, so that was the argument, right? Again, I'm sort of late to this, but this idea, like, okay, is it a country song or not? And Billboard was trying to figure out, do we put it on the country charts? And I'm like, it's a country song. Like,
I think it's a pop song. And
I mean, I
you can put
guess,
it on the country chart and the pop chart.
Well,
Pop
yeah,
just means
sure,
popular.
but a lot of country songs are like that too. I mean,
yeah, but a lot of country songs aren't like crossover popular. They're very popular and they sell a ton of records, but
Yeah.
they're like they do very well in a very specific segment. But this song does well. I don't know, and I should because I have a lot of family members that are all about the country music. I don't know how well it does in the actual country. Like, do they play this on country music stations?
I don't know the answer to that.
Because that would that would probably tell you where to put it. I assume that when they came out with the Billy Ray Cyrus remix, it probably ended up on country stations. But see, I remember in the '90s, like or even with like Taylor Swift, like so '90s with I think it was named Leanne Rimes. She would make essentially they would make a pop version of her country songs, which just meant they would take out the steel guitar and add like a pop beat in the background, but like everything else would be the same, and they would be like, this is the pop version, and then you have the other end of the spectrum where you would have I can't remember who there would be an R&B group would make a song, and then John Michael Montgomery would make a country version of it, and so it was kind of like what they did back in the 40s and 50s, but he would make a country version of it. So the R&B version would be a top hit on the pop charts, and then the country version would be a top hit and that was very popular in the 90s for country versions of pop hits because you had to apparently like white folk them up so they could absorb the information. That's why I'm wondering if actually they would play Old Town Road, because even the Billy Ray Cyrus version has like definite hit. It still has the hip hop beats and everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if like they actually play that. So if you listen to country music radio stations, please tell us if they play that on country stations, because I don't really listen to radio stations very much at all. I do listen to like The End occasionally and NPR, but that's pretty much I mostly listen to NPR and podcasts in the car. So if you listen to a country music radio station, get at us on our Twitter or email. Let us know if you've actually heard the Old Town Road on your country station. Because
I would love to know.
That would probably end the art. Like if they played on the country stations and the people who listen to country stations want to hear it and request it, and they want to hear it over and over again, then yes, put it on the country chart. But if like they throw it on the country station, and they're like, what the hell is this? Get this off of our station right now. and that because you definitely hear it on pop stations. So I don't know. Because you hear it at everywhere, so it must be everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just the most transcendent hit of all time. Who knows?
Maybe. It's also short.
Yeah, it's
I didn't
very
realize
short.
it's like 2 minutes. Like that's
Yeah. The original version is just
interesting.
over 2 minutes. The Billy Ray Cyrus version, where he adds a verse, is about 2:30. Yeah, it's incredibly short. Which hey, that's like old school songs, very short.
Yeah.
Like 50s. Back
Yeah.
back when America was great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey,
Back when you could obstruct justice and get away with it and people didn't like question you.
yeah,
Just do whatever you want.
and we got
Run the country the way you see fit.
we got the politics segment in.
Keep those brown people out of your country without courts getting in the way.
You didn't think it would happen, but we got the
politics. You didn't think it would happen. You had to wait. Wait, where are we? You had to wait almost 2 hours to get there. But we finally got there.
I don't know. I feel like your son's opinions on Thanos is politics.
Maybe a little. Maybe
Thanos is right.
I know. Like I'm like, no, like I can't, I'm like, I just, a little white supremacist in the making. I'm like, no, we're not going to have this conversation. Like he's an evil, awful person. We are not going to rationalize this. So anyway, whatever. Don't go to 8chan, Atticus.
Atticus is going to found 12chan.
Oh, so gross. Whoa. Sorry. I pushed
bonus content. All
no,
right.
Stop doing that. Apparently I can't run my phone.
You can't stop this song.
I don't know. Apparently I
ain't nobody tell me nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say you can't stop that song. It's everywhere.
All right, man.
Okay.
This officially and very much
This is our longest episode. Pray for anyone who makes it this far.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for listening. Podcast versus everyone at gmail.com with questions and comments, especially the bad comments so I can make fun of you. Pod versus everyone on Twitter for Jeff's thoughts on things. Pretty much uncensored thoughts because his name's not attached to it.
It's kind of
and then
behind it, you don't know if I wrote it or if Craig wrote it.
Let's see, that's JN. Otherwise, it could be me.
Right.
I tweet from there sometimes. And then, if you want my tweets, it's at the Craig Powers. Thank you for the people that have followed me to get me over that 1,500 mark. I appreciate it. Let's keep on going. Yeah. But yes, subscribe to us and give us 5 stars. We would appreciate that. We got a long summer ahead of us, and those reviews will keep us going when we have literally nothing to talk about.
Oh, hey, should we tell everyone we're not going to have an episode next week?
Oh yeah, there's not going to be an episode next week. I have a extremely busy work conference in Orlando that I'll be at, which is why I'm going a couple of days early to take the B to the Disney World, which we talked about at the start. But then I have the busiest conference, essentially the busiest week of the year for me. So I cannot carve out 2 hours to talk to Jeff about nothing. Because that's pretty much what we're gonna have to talk about.
And y'all got like 2 bonus episodes in there with Ernie Kent and
I know all of y'all haven't listened because we got more listeners on our recent episodes than our old ones. So go back and listen to some of those golden oldies.
There you go.
They're there and they're ready to listen to.
And if you need, if you're that hard up and you need good podcast recommendations, we can also do that for you too.
Yep, we can do that. All right,
man.
Well, thank you for listening, and go Cougs.
Go Cougs.